The woman dropped the coffee cup. It shattered across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the silent lobby. For a moment, nobody moved. Not the receptionist, not the security guard, not the executives waiting near the elevators. Nobody, because every person in the room was staring at the same thing. A tall Korean man in a black suit had just stepped through the revolving doors. And the moment his eyes landed on the black janitor standing across the lobby, he stopped walking. The janitor froze. The crime boss froze. Neither looked away. The air itself seemed to tighten, as though the building somehow understood that two people who were never supposed to meet again had just found each other. The woman's face drained of color. The cleaning cloth slipped from her fingers. And for the first time in 7 years, Zaria Vale felt genuine terror. Not fear, not anxiety, not paranoia. Terror, because she recognized him immediately. Kang Min-Jae, the one man she had spent 7 years trying to avoid. The one man who could destroy everything. The one man who could uncover the secret she had buried deeper than her own name. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. But somewhere deep inside, Zaria already knew. Her life was over. The nightmare she had escaped 7 years ago had finally found her. And the worst part, Min-Jae had no idea who she truly was. Yet, long before that moment happened, Zaria's life had become an endless routine built on one simple rule: never attract attention. Every evening, she boarded the same crowded bus. Every evening, she sat near the back. Every evening, she kept her eyes lowered and her headphones on. Not because she was listening to music, because people rarely spoke to someone wearing headphones. And Zaria preferred it that way. The less people noticed her, the safer she felt. Outside the bus windows, Seoul glowed beneath the evening sky. Towering skyscrapers reflected thousands of lights. Luxury cars crawled through traffic. Couples laughed beneath brightly lit storefronts. Life moved forward. Normal, peaceful, predictable, at least for everyone else. Zaria never felt safe enough to enjoy any of it, even after 7 years. Especially after 7 years. She exited the bus and began walking toward Daehan Financial Group. The 70-story tower dominated the district. Its glass exterior reflected the fading sunlight like a giant mirror. Thousands of employees entered the building every day. Almost none of them knew her name. That suited her perfectly. As she approached the employee entrance, she nodded politely to the security guard. The older man smiled. "Evening, Zaria." "Evening. You always arrive early." She returned a small smile. "Old habit." The guard laughed. "If everyone worked as hard as you, I'd be unemployed." Zaria laughed softly and continued inside. The interaction lasted less than 10 seconds. Yet she spent the next 5 minutes wondering if she had smiled too much, if she had talked too long, if she had become too memorable. That was how her mind worked now. Every interaction felt dangerous. Every stranger felt suspicious. Every unexpected glance triggered old fears. She hated living that way, but survival had become a habit, and habits were difficult to break. The cleaning crew gathered in a storage room on the lower level. Most of them were talking about ordinary things: weekend plans, family problems, sports, television shows. Zaria listened quietly while preparing her supplies. A younger employee named Hannah sat beside her. "You know," Hannah said, "I've worked with you for 2 years and still know almost nothing about you." Zaria smiled. "Maybe I'm boring." "You're definitely not boring." Hannah leaned closer. "Nobody can be that mysterious naturally." Zaria laughed. "Trust me, I'm not mysterious." Hannah rolled her eyes. That's exactly what a mysterious person would say. The room erupted with laughter. For a moment, Zaria laughed too. A genuine laugh. The kind she rarely allowed herself. Then her eyes drifted toward the doorway. The laughter faded. Nobody was there. Still, the feeling returned. That familiar feeling. The sensation that someone was watching. Someone waiting. Someone patient. Her smile disappeared. And just like that, the warmth of the moment was gone. Across the city, another person was having a much worse evening. Kang Min-Jae sat alone, inside a private office overlooking Seoul. Rain streaked across the enormous glass windows. The city lights below looked distant, unimportant. His attention remained fixed on a photograph resting on his desk. The photograph showed two young men standing beside a motorcycle. One of them was smiling. The other wasn't. The smiling one was dead. Kang Jun-seo, his older brother, his best friend, the only family he had ever trusted completely. 7 years had passed since Jun-seo's murder. 7 years since the police claimed they solved the case. 7 years since everyone told Min-Jae to move on. He never did, because the official story never made sense. The evidence felt wrong. The timeline felt wrong. The suspects felt wrong. Everything felt wrong. And buried somewhere beneath the lies was a single unanswered question. Who was the witness? Someone had been present the night Jun-seo died. Someone had seen something. Someone had vanished immediately afterward. The underworld eventually gave that witness a nickname, the Ghost. Nobody knew the witness's real identity. Nobody knew where they went. Nobody knew whether they were alive. But Min-Jae knew one thing. The ghost was real, because every trail eventually led back to the same missing person, a witness everyone wanted to find, including people who wanted that witness dead. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His chief investigator entered. "Any updates?" Min-Jae asked. The investigator shook his head. "Nothing." Min-Jae's jaw tightened. Another dead end. Another wasted lead. Another year disappearing into the darkness. The investigator hesitated before speaking again. "Maybe it's time to consider the possibility that the witness is dead." Min-Jae looked up. The room instantly became uncomfortable. "No," the investigator swallowed. "Why are you so certain?" Min-Jae stared toward the rain-covered window. "Because if the witness were dead." His voice remained calm. The people responsible wouldn't still be looking. The investigator said nothing, because he knew Min-Jae was right. There were still powerful people searching for the ghost. After 7 years, which meant the witness was probably alive, and still dangerous. Later that night, Zaria returned home. Her apartment was small but tidy, a place designed for anonymity. Nothing expensive, nothing memorable, nothing that attracted attention. She locked the door, then locked it again, then checked the windows, then checked them again. Only after completing the routine did she relax, or at least try to. She prepared tea and sat near the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. For a few peaceful minutes, everything felt normal. Then she noticed it. The photograph, a framed picture resting on a shelf. It had moved. Barely. Perhaps an inch. Most people wouldn't notice. Zaria did. The cup slipped slightly in her hands. Her pulse accelerated. Slowly she stood. Slowly she approached. The frame wasn't broken. Nothing appeared stolen. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet every instinct inside her screamed the same thing. Someone touched this. The apartment suddenly felt colder. She searched every room, every corner, every closet. Nothing. No intruder. No evidence. No explanation. And somehow that made it worse, because uncertainty was far more frightening than certainty. Hours later, sleep finally arrived. But peace did not. The nightmare returned. Flashes of fire, screaming, blood, rain. A man collapsing onto wet pavement. A voice shouting. Footsteps running. Then darkness. Zaria woke suddenly, breathing hard, sweat covering her forehead. The same nightmare. The same memories. The same night. 7 years later. And she still couldn't escape it. If you're enjoying the story so far, take a second to like the video and subscribe. There are secrets buried in this mystery that even Zaria doesn't fully understand yet. Outside her apartment, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, she sat awake until sunrise, completely unaware that fate was already moving toward her. Fast, relentless, and impossible to stop. The following afternoon, a private investigator stepped into Kang Min-Jae's office carrying a sealed envelope. Something about the man's expression immediately caught Min-Jae's attention. Excitement, disbelief, fear. The investigator placed the envelope on the desk. "We found something." For the first time in months, Min-Jae felt his heartbeat quicken. Slowly, he opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. A grainy security camera image. Poor quality. Almost worthless. Almost. His eyes narrowed. A woman. Dark skin. Cleaning uniform. Pushing a janitor's cart through the lobby of a corporate tower. The image was blurry, but not blurry enough. Min-Jae stared at it for several long seconds. The investigator remained silent, waiting. Finally, Min-Jae stood. Rain hammered against the windows behind him. His gaze never left the photograph. 7 years. 7 years of searching. 7 years of failure. And suddenly, for the first time, the ghost seemed real. Not a rumor, not a theory. A person, a living, breathing person. His eyes shifted toward a tiny detail visible on the edge of the image. A company logo. The logo of a cleaning contractor. Very small, very easy to miss. But it was enough. A dangerous calm settled over him. He placed the photograph carefully on the desk, then reached for his phone. Across the city, completely unaware that her past had just found her, Zaria stepped off a bus and pulled her coat tighter against the evening wind. Min-Jae dialed a number. The call connected instantly. His voice was calm, controlled, almost emotionless. "Find out where she works." And somewhere deep inside, a 7-year-old mystery finally began to move. The investigation started less than 10 minutes after the call ended. Kang Min-Jae stood beside the rain-covered window of his office, while 3 members of his private intelligence team worked around the clock. The cleaning company logo from the security photograph had already been identified. The company serviced 12 corporate buildings across Seoul. More than 80 janitors worked for them. Ordinarily, narrowing the search would have taken days. Min-Jae wasn't interested in days. He wanted answers now. One of the investigators suddenly looked up from his computer. "We found the building." The room grew quiet. A digital image appeared on a large monitor. Daehan Financial Group. The same tower from the photograph. Min-Jae walked closer. "Employee records? We're working on it." Minutes later, another file appeared. Then another. Then another. Dozens of janitorial staff members. Photographs. Names. Employment histories. Addresses. Everything. Min-Jae studied each face carefully. Most were immediately eliminated. Wrong age. Wrong build. Wrong profile. Then he stopped. A photograph filled the screen. The room fell silent. A black woman. Dark brown skin. Natural curly hair. Quiet eyes. No smile. No obvious emotion. Yet something about her instantly caught his attention. The investigator read from the file. Name, Zaria Vale. Min-Jae said, "Nothing." Age 28. Still nothing. Employed for 3 years. No disciplinary reports. No criminal history. Lives alone. The investigator hesitated. She's surprisingly difficult to track before arriving in Korea. Now Min-Jae looked up. What do you mean? There are gaps. What kind of gaps? The investigator enlarged the report. For someone her age, there should be more records. Min-Jae's eyes narrowed. The investigator continued. 7 years ago, her trail becomes almost impossible to follow. Nobody spoke. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. 7 years. The same number that haunted every part of the ghost investigation. The same number attached to his brother's murder. The same number attached to the witness who disappeared. The same number attached to a woman named Zaria Vale. Min-Jae slowly folded his arms. For the first time, the possibility felt real. Not because he had proof, because his instincts had never been wrong before. And right now, they were screaming. Meanwhile, Zaria was having a terrible day. The uneasy feeling from the previous night hadn't disappeared. If anything, it had become stronger. Every shadow felt suspicious. Every stranger seemed unfamiliar. Every glance lasted too long. She hated it. The constant anxiety, the endless waiting, the fear that never fully left. She was cleaning conference rooms on the 42nd floor when Hannah appeared in the doorway. You look exhausted. Zaria forced a smile. I didn't sleep much. Nightmares again. The question caught her off guard. She looked up. What makes you think that? Hannah shrugged. You always get that look when you haven't slept. Zaria laughed softly. I didn't know I had a look. You definitely have a look. For a brief moment, the conversation felt normal, safe. Then Hannah said something unexpected. Have you ever thought about leaving Korea? The mop froze in Zaria's hands. The reaction was subtle, but immediate. Hannah noticed. Whoa. What? You answered way too fast. I didn't answer. Exactly. Zaria looked away. The subject made her uncomfortable, not because she hated Korea. Quite the opposite. She had built her life here. What frightened her was movement, starting over, being seen, being noticed, changing anything. Because every major change in her life had always been followed by disaster. I like where I am, she finally said. Hannah nodded, but something about the answer felt incomplete. Across the city, Min-Jae made a decision. I want to see her. The investigators exchanged looks. One finally spoke. Directly? No. Min-Jae grabbed his coat. First, I want to know if she recognizes me. The next evening, Zaria arrived at work 20 minutes early. A light drizzle covered the city. The lobby was unusually quiet. She pushed her cart toward the service elevator. Halfway there, she stopped. A strange feeling washed over her. Someone was watching. Slowly, she turned. Nothing. Just people moving through the lobby. Executives, visitors, security personnel. Nobody suspicious. Yet the feeling remained. A familiar knot tightened inside her stomach. For years she had learned to trust her instincts. Those instincts were rarely wrong. Without realizing it, her eyes scanned every face nearby. And then she saw him, not Min-Jae, one of his men, standing near a column pretending to read messages on his phone. Most people would never have noticed. Zaria did, because she had spent years studying people who watched without wanting to be seen. Their eyes met briefly, only a second. Then he looked away, too quickly. A chill moved through her body. Her pulse accelerated. Something wasn't right. She immediately turned and continued walking. Faster this time. The man remained where he was, but she could feel his presence, watching, measuring, evaluating. By the time she reached the elevator, her heart was pounding. The doors opened. She stepped inside. The doors closed, and only then did she breathe. The feeling was unmistakable. Someone had noticed her. Later that night, a report landed on Min-Jae's desk. The surveillance operative sat across from him. Well, the man nodded. Interesting. Min-Jae waited. She spotted me. That got his attention. How? I'm not sure. The operative looked genuinely frustrated. I was careful. Min-Jae believed him. The man was one of the best observers he employed. Very few people ever detected him. Describe her reaction. Immediate awareness. Min-Jae remained silent. The operative continued. Not fear. What then? The man considered the question. Recognition. Min-Jae slowly leaned back. Recognition. Not fear of a stranger. Recognition of a threat. That was different. Very different. Because ordinary people didn't react that way. Witnesses did. People hiding secrets did. People with experience being hunted did. And suddenly the file on Zaria Vale became much more interesting. That same night, Zaria couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The city felt different. The streets felt different. Even the air seemed different. She arrived home and immediately checked the locks. Then checked them again. Her hands trembled slightly. She hated that. She hated feeling weak. 7 years ago, she had promised herself she would never live in fear again. Yet here she was, terrified, for reasons she couldn't fully explain, unable to relax, unable to sleep, unable to ignore the voice in the back of her mind. Run. The thought appeared suddenly. Run now. Leave. Disappear. Start over. Her breathing became heavier. No, she couldn't do that. Not again. She had spent years building this life, years creating stability, years becoming someone else. Walking away would destroy everything. Yet another voice whispered inside her head. What if it's already too late? The apartment suddenly felt smaller, colder, more vulnerable. Without realizing it, her eyes drifted toward the locked metal box beneath her bed. The box she had avoided opening for years. The box containing pieces of a life she no longer wanted. The box containing answers. And possibly danger. She stared at it for a long time. Then looked away. Not tonight. 2 days later, Min-Jae finally decided to see her himself. No bodyguards. No entourage. No attention. Just observation. The luxury cafe across from Daehan Financial Group provided the perfect view. From a corner table near the window, he watched employees come and go. Hours passed. Nothing. Then he saw her, Zaria Vale, walking toward the building entrance carrying a small umbrella. For a moment, the world seemed to slow. The photograph hadn't prepared him for this. She looked ordinary, normal. Someone nobody would notice twice. And yet, something about her felt familiar. Not her face, not her appearance. Something deeper, something impossible to explain. His eyes followed her across the street. Then something unexpected happened. Halfway to the entrance, Zaria stopped walking. Her body became still, completely still, as though every instinct inside her had suddenly awakened. Slowly, very slowly, she turned her head and looked directly toward the cafe window, directly toward him. Neither moved, neither looked away. Across the busy Seoul street, their eyes locked for the very first time. And in that single moment, Zaria's face changed. Not dramatically, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for Min-Jae. Shock, recognition, fear. Then she quickly looked away and entered the building. Gone. The entire encounter lasted less than 3 seconds. But it was enough. More than enough. Because for the first time in 7 years, Min-Jae was absolutely certain of one thing. The woman knew exactly who he was. And if she knew who he was, then somehow she was connected to the night his brother died. Zaria barely remembered walking home that evening. The moment she stepped through her apartment door, She leaned against it and closed her eyes. Her hands were shaking, not because Kang Min-Jae had spoken to her. He hadn't. Not because he had approached her. He hadn't. What frightened her was something much worse. He had looked at her, and she had recognized him instantly. 7 years had passed. 7 long years. Yet the moment she saw his face through the cafe window, every wall she had built inside her mind had cracked. The memories were returning, and memories were dangerous. Outside, rain continued to fall over Seoul. Inside the apartment, silence surrounded her, the kind of silence that made old ghosts louder. Slowly, she walked toward her bedroom. The locked metal box remained hidden beneath the bed, waiting, patient, like it always had. For years, she had refused to open it. For years, she had convinced herself the past belonged in the past. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like the beginning of something, or the end. She knelt beside the bed, reached underneath, and pulled the box into the open. Dust covered its surface. The lock was old, the metal scratched and worn. For several seconds, she simply stared at it. Then she unlocked it. Click. The sound seemed unnaturally loud. The lid opened, and 7 years of buried memories stared back at her. A faded notebook, several old photographs, a train ticket, a damaged cell phone, and a silver necklace. The moment she saw the necklace, her breathing stopped because she remembered exactly who had given it to her. 7 years earlier, Busan, the night everything changed. The rain had been even heavier then. Sheets of water poured from the sky. Thunder rolled across the harbor. And 19-year-old Zaria Vale was running for her life. At least that was how it felt. Back then, she had been very different. Hopeful, fearless, trusting. She had arrived in South Korea only months earlier. Young, ambitious, convinced the future would be kind to her. She had been wrong. That night, she wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the harbor district. She wasn't supposed to witness anything. She wasn't supposed to see anyone. Most importantly, she wasn't supposed to see the man lying on the ground. The memory struck her so suddenly that she nearly dropped the necklace. Present day, Zaria squeezed her eyes shut. But it was too late. The past was awake now, and once awakened, it refused to stay buried. Across the city, Kang Min-Jae was experiencing a sleepless night of his own. The encounter outside Daehan Financial Group refused to leave his thoughts. The reaction had been real. He was certain of it. The moment their eyes met, Zaria recognized him. Not as a stranger, not as a businessman, not as a public figure. She recognized him personally. That changed everything. The evidence wasn't enough to prove she was the ghost, but it was enough to convince him she knew something. And after 7 years, something was more than he had yesterday. His office remained illuminated long after midnight. Files covered every available surface. Photographs, reports, witness statements, maps, old police documents. Min-Jae stood over the evidence wall and studied a photograph of his brother, Kang Jun-seo, 33 years old, brilliant, respected, dead. The official report claimed armed criminals had murdered him during a confrontation. The case had been closed within weeks. Yet every year that passed made Min-Jae more convinced that someone had manipulated the investigation. There were gaps, contradictions, missing evidence, witnesses who disappeared, records that vanished, questions nobody wanted answered. And always, the ghost, the unidentified witness, the person who saw something, the person who disappeared, the person everyone seemed desperate to find, dead or alive. A knock interrupted his thoughts. His chief investigator entered carrying another folder. Something interesting? Min-Jae asked, The investigator nodded. We finally located a former employee from the cleaning company where Zaria worked before coming to Seoul. Min-Jae looked up immediately, and, according to her, Zaria changed her name. The room fell silent. A cold smile appeared on Min-Jae's face. Now, they were getting somewhere. Meanwhile, Zaria sat alone on the floor. The notebook rested in her lap. Its pages had yellowed with age. Some corners were torn, others stained by water, or tears. She wasn't sure which anymore. Slowly she turned the first page. Most entries were ordinary, daily observations, expenses, appointments, thoughts, the writing of a young woman trying to build a life in a foreign country. Then she reached a page dated 7 years earlier. Her fingers froze. The handwriting looked different. Messier, rushed, terrified. She began reading. The memory returned immediately. A dark warehouse near the harbor, voices arguing, several expensive vehicles parked outside, rain pouring from the sky, and a man she wasn't supposed to see. Present day, Zaria closed the notebook. Her heart hammered violently. No, not yet. She wasn't ready. The memories were incomplete, broken, fragmented, like pieces of shattered glass scattered across the floor of her mind. Yet one thing remained clear. The man on the ground, the blood, the rain, the scream. She remembered those parts perfectly. What she didn't remember was everything that happened afterward, and that terrified her most. The following morning, Zaria arrived at work exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. Her thoughts felt scattered, unfocused, dangerous. She spent most of the morning cleaning executive offices. Normally, she enjoyed the quiet. Today, the silence felt oppressive. Every sound startled her. Every unexpected movement made her jump. At lunchtime, Hannah found her sitting alone in a break room. "You look awful." Zaria laughed weakly. "Thanks. You know what I mean." Hannah sat beside her. "What's going on?" For a moment, Zaria considered telling her. Not the truth, just enough to feel less alone. But years of secrecy stopped her. Nobody could help her. Nobody, especially not now. "I'm fine." Hannah sighed. "No, you're not." Zaria stared at her coffee. "Have you ever felt like your past is chasing you?" The question surprised both of them. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Hannah smiled gently. "Sometimes." "What do you do?" "Depends." "On what?" "Whether the past is actually chasing me." Zaria looked away, because in her case, it was. That afternoon, another development shook Min-Jae's investigation. A digital reconstruction specialist enhanced the security image. Not perfectly, but enough. The image of Zaria became clearer. The operative placed the enhanced photograph beside an old witness sketch created 7 years earlier. Everyone in the room stared. Nobody spoke. The similarities weren't exact, but they were impossible to ignore. The same eyes, the same facial structure, the same profile. The investigator finally broke the silence. "You think it's her?" Min-Jae never looked away. "I think we're getting close." For 7 years, every lead had ended in disappointment. This one felt different, dangerously different, because for the first time, the ghost wasn't a rumor. The ghost had a name, a face, an address, a job, and perhaps soon, answers. If you're enjoying the mystery so far, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. The truth behind what happened 7 years ago is much darker than anyone realizes. That evening, Zaria returned home and immediately locked the door. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She opened the notebook again. This time she forced herself to keep reading, page after page, memory after memory. until she reached an entry that made her stop breathing. The words were written in a shaky hand, as though the writer had been terrified while writing them. Zaria read the sentence once, then again, then a third time. A cold chill spread through her body because she suddenly remembered something important, something she had forgotten for 7 years. The man who died that night wasn't alone. Someone else had been there, someone hidden, someone watching. And for the first time since opening the notebook, a face appeared in her memory, blurred, incomplete, but visible. A man standing beneath the rain, watching everything, watching the murder, watching her. The realization hit like lightning, because if she remembered him, then there was a chance he remembered her too. And if that was true, then she had never been hiding from one enemy. She had been hiding from two. Outside her apartment window, a black sedan slowly rolled past the building. Its tinted windows concealed the occupants. The vehicle continued down the street, then stopped at the corner. The engine remained running. Inside the car, a man lowered a pair of binoculars and looked directly toward Zaria's apartment. The hunt was no longer one-sided. Someone else had finally found her. The black sedan remained parked at the corner long after midnight. Its headlights were off, its engine barely audible. From the 5th floor window of her apartment, Zaria couldn't see it, but she could feel it. The same way animals sense danger before a storm. The same way survivors recognized patterns other people ignored. Something had changed. The feeling followed her into sleep and into the following morning. By sunrise, the sedan was gone. No tire tracks, no evidence, no explanation, only a lingering sense of dread. Zaria stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection. She looked exhausted. The woman staring back at her appeared older than 28. Fear did that. Secrets did that. 7 years of looking over her shoulder had carved invisible scars into her life. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to focus. Today would be normal. It had to be, because if she allowed herself to believe every fear, every suspicion, every nightmare, she would lose her mind. She dressed for work, grabbed her bag, and left the apartment, completely unaware that 3 different groups were now interested in her. Only one of them worked for Kang Min-Jae. The others were far more dangerous. Across Seoul, Min-Jae sat in silence as surveillance photographs appeared on a large screen. His investigators had spent the last 48 hours monitoring Zaria. Nothing unusual. No criminal contacts. No suspicious meetings. No hidden bank accounts. No secret communications. On paper, she was exactly what she appeared to be. A janitor. A quiet woman living a simple life. But Min-Jae wasn't convinced. People didn't erase 7 years of their history by accident. People didn't recognize him after one glance unless there was a reason. And people certainly didn't react the way Zaria had reacted. The investigator changed slides. A photograph of Zaria leaving her apartment, another entering the subway, another arriving at work, then another. Min-Jae's eyes narrowed. Go back. The investigator obeyed. The image enlarged. Zaria walking down the sidewalk. Nothing unusual. Then Min-Jae noticed it. A reflection. Small. Almost invisible. In the glass window of a nearby store. A man. Watching her. The investigator frowned. We saw that too. Min-Jae looked at him. You identify him? No. The answer immediately bothered him, because his team usually identified everyone. The unknown man appeared again in another image. And another. Always distant. Always watching. Never close enough for a clear photograph. The room grew quiet. Finally, Min-Jae spoke. We're not the only ones following her. Nobody argued, because everyone had reached the same conclusion. Meanwhile, Zaria's day began normally, at least on the surface. The lobby bustled with activity. Executives hurried toward elevators. Visitors checked into meetings. Security guards exchanged greetings. Everything looked ordinary, but ordinary had become difficult to trust. She spent most of the morning cleaning executive offices. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the notebook, the harbor, the rain, the dead man, the hidden witness, the missing memories. The more she remembered, the less she understood, and the more she feared what might come next. Around noon, she received an unexpected request. One of the building managers approached her. "Zaria." She looked up. "Yes. Can you deliver these files to conference room A?" The request wasn't unusual. Employees often helped with small tasks. "Of course." The manager smiled. "Thank you." Zaria gathered the documents and headed upstairs. The conference room occupied one of the executive floors. Normally she avoided that area. Too many important people, too much attention, but she had no reason to refuse. Not yet. The hallway was quiet when she arrived. She adjusted the stack of files and pushed open the door. Then stopped. Someone was already inside. Kang Min-Jae. For one frozen second, neither moved. The room seemed to shrink around them. Her pulse exploded. Every survival instinct she possessed screamed at her to leave. Immediately, Min-Jae stood beside the window, calm, composed, watching her, as though he had expected this exact moment. The files nearly slipped from her hands, but years of practice kept her expression under control. "Barely. Sorry," she said. "I didn't realize the room was occupied." She turned to leave. "Miss Vale." His voice stopped her. Low, controlled, dangerously calm. Zaria slowly turned back. The distance between them felt enormous, and yet not nearly large enough. Yes, Min-Jae studied her carefully, not aggressively, not threateningly, carefully, like a man examining a puzzle. "You've worked here for several years, correct?" The question sounded innocent, normal, but she immediately understood what was happening. This wasn't a conversation. It was an investigation. 3 years. His eyes never left hers. "You like it here?" "Yes." "You plan to stay?" Every question felt loaded. Every answer felt dangerous. Still, she nodded. "I do." Silence followed, the kind of silence that made people nervous, the kind of silence Min-Jae used deliberately. Then came the question, the one she had feared. "Have we met before?" The room became impossibly still. Years seemed to collapse into seconds. The harbor, the rain, the blood, the nightmare, everything flashed through her mind at once. But her face remained calm. Somehow. No, the lie came easily, too easily. Min-Jae noticed, not because of what she said, because of how she said it. The answer arrived half a second too quickly. A tiny detail. Most people would miss it. He didn't. "You seem certain." "I'm sure I would remember." Another lie, and they both knew it. The conversation lasted less than 2 minutes. Yet when it ended, neither person believed the other. After she left the conference room, Zaria locked herself inside an empty restroom. Her breathing was unsteady. Her hands trembled. She hated herself for that. She had survived far worse than a conversation. Yet seeing Min-Jae in person felt different, because photographs couldn't capture his eyes. Photographs couldn't capture his intensity. Photographs couldn't capture the determination of a man who had spent 7 years searching for answers. The encounter confirmed her worst fear. He was close, much closer than before, and if he continued digging, he would eventually find something. That evening, Min-Jae reviewed every detail of the meeting. The investigator sat across from him. "What do you think?" Min-Jae remained silent. What did she say? Very little. The investigator frowned. Then how can you be sure? Min-Jae leaned back, because certainty was exactly what he felt. Not certainty that she was the ghost, certainty that she was hiding something. She lied. The investigator looked surprised. About what? Everything. The answer hung in the air. Min-Jae tapped the conference room, photograph displayed on his tablet. She knew who I was. You think she's connected? I know she's connected. The investigator hesitated. What if she's scared of you because of your reputation? Min-Jae shook his head. No. His voice was quiet, certain. That wasn't fear. The investigator waited. Min-Jae stared toward the city lights. It was recognition. Later that night, another meeting took place elsewhere in Seoul. A hidden room. No windows. No cameras. No records. 3 men sat around a table. One of them slid a photograph forward. The image showed Zaria leaving work. Silence filled the room. Finally, one man spoke. You're certain? The second man nodded. It's her. The third man's expression darkened. After 7 years. Yes. Nobody spoke for several moments. Then the oldest man sighed. We should have dealt with this years ago. A chill moved through the room, because all 3 understood what that meant. The witness was alive. The witness had been found. And if Kang Min-Jae found her first, everything could unravel. The oldest man looked toward the photograph. His eyes hardened. Send someone. The room fell silent again. This time, nobody objected. Near midnight, Zaria sat alone in her apartment. The notebook remained open on her lap. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The city outside seemed peaceful, normal, but peace was becoming increasingly difficult to believe in. Her eyes drifted toward one particular page, the page containing details she still couldn't fully understand. Then something slipped from between the pages. A photograph. Old. Folded. Forgotten. Zaria picked it up. At first, she didn't understand what she was seeing. Then her blood turned cold, because standing in the background of the photograph, partially hidden behind several people, was the same mysterious man she had remembered the previous night. The hidden witness. The man in the rain. The man who watched the murder. Only now she could see his face more clearly. Not perfectly, but enough. Enough to recognize him if she ever saw him again. The realization struck her instantly. She wasn't the only witness. She never had been. And somewhere out there, the other witness was still alive, unaware that at that exact moment, a hired killer was boarding a train to Seoul. And his first assignment in 7 years had just been delivered. Find Zaria Vale. The train arrived in Seoul shortly after dawn. Among the crowd stepping onto the platform was a man carrying a small black duffel bag. Nothing about him attracted attention. Average height, average build, average face. The kind of man people forgot moments after seeing him, which was exactly why he was dangerous. He moved through the station without rushing, without hesitation, without drawing attention. His phone vibrated once. A new message appeared. One photograph. One name. Zaria Vale. The man studied the image for several seconds, then deleted the message. His assignment had begun. At the same moment, Zaria stood in front of her bathroom mirror preparing for work. The photograph she had discovered the previous night rested beside the sink. She had barely slept. Again, the image continued haunting her thoughts. The mysterious man hidden in the background, the second witness, the person who had somehow remained invisible for 7 years. If he was alive, then he might possess answers she desperately needed. Answers about the harbor, answers about the murder, answers about why her life had been destroyed. Most importantly, answers about what she couldn't remember. The gaps in her memory were becoming impossible to ignore. Every day another fragment returned. Every day the picture became clearer. And every day she felt more afraid of what the completed picture might reveal. Her phone buzzed. A text from Hannah. "You looked like a ghost yesterday. Lunch today." For the first time in days, Zaria smiled. A small smile, but genuine. "Shelby Cafe. Noon. See you there." She sent the reply and placed the phone in her pocket. For a brief moment, everything felt normal. Then she glanced out the window. A man stood across the street, watching the building. The smile disappeared instantly. Her pulse accelerated. The man wasn't doing anything suspicious. Not obviously. He appeared to be drinking coffee, looking at his phone, waiting. Yet every instinct inside her screamed the same warning. Danger. The moment she looked directly at him, he casually turned and walked away. Too casually, too perfectly. Zaria stepped back from the window. Her hands had already started shaking. Someone was watching her. Again, across the city, Kang Min-Jae received another report. His investigation team had spent the night digging deeper into Zaria's past. The results were disturbing. The investigator placed several documents on the desk. "Everything before 7 years ago exists." Min-Jae nodded. "And after also exists." The investigator tapped the empty space between the files. But this period, several pages were missing. Entire months, large sections of her life, gone, not hidden, removed. Someone had deliberately erased them. Min-Jae studied the evidence. That kind of cleanup required resources, planning, money, connections, far beyond what an ordinary young woman could accomplish alone, which meant someone had helped her disappear, or someone had wanted her hidden. Neither possibility made him comfortable. "Keep digging." The investigator nodded, then hesitated. "There is something else." Min-Jae looked up. "We believe another group is monitoring her." The room became quiet. Again, the second time in less than a week. That wasn't coincidence. That was confirmation. The question was no longer whether someone else wanted Zaria. The question was why, and the answer almost certainly led back to his brother's death. By noon, Zaria was seated across from Hannah inside a small cafe. The atmosphere felt warm, comfortable, safe, a welcome contrast to the growing tension in her life. Hannah studied her carefully. "You still look terrible." Zaria laughed. "You always know exactly what to say." "I'm serious." "I know." Hannah leaned forward. "What happened?" The concern in her voice was genuine. For a dangerous moment, Zaria considered telling her everything. Not every detail. Not the murder. Not the secrets. Just enough. Enough to share the burden. But she stopped herself, because anyone close to her could become a target, and Hannah deserved better than that. "I'm just stressed." Hannah sighed. That's the fifth version of the same answer. Zaria smiled weakly. "And you're still asking." "Because I care." The words landed harder than Hannah realized, because caring had become rare in Zaria's life. Rare and dangerous. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Zaria noticed something. A reflection in the cafe window. A man seated outside, watching, not drinking, not eating, watching. The same man from earlier. Her blood ran cold. The conversation faded into background noise. Everything narrowed. The man, the window, the feeling, the certainty. He wasn't there by accident. And suddenly she knew. The fear she'd been fighting all week wasn't paranoia. Someone really was following her. The man remained seated outside long after Zaria and Hannah left. Only when they disappeared around a corner did he stand. A black sedan pulled alongside the curb. The rear window lowered slightly. A voice emerged from inside. "Confirm." The man nodded. "It's her." The voice inside the car remained silent, then finally spoke. Proceed. The sedan drove away, leaving the watcher alone. A faint smile appeared on his face, the kind that never reached the eyes. That evening, Min-Jae made an unusual decision. Instead of sending investigators, he returned to Daehan Financial Group himself. The building was nearly empty. Most employees had gone home. Only security staff and maintenance crews remained, including Zaria. He found her cleaning a hallway on the executive floor. The encounter appeared accidental. It wasn't. Zaria immediately sensed it. Her shoulders stiffened. Her pulse quickened. Min-Jae noticed. "You seem nervous whenever you see me." The statement wasn't a question. Zaria kept working. "I don't know what you mean." A lie. Another one. Min-Jae almost admired her discipline. Most people became emotional under pressure. Zaria became careful. That made her more interesting and more dangerous. He walked beside her, not threatening, not aggressive, simply present. "Have you lived in Seoul long?" "Several years." Before that, the mop stopped moving, only briefly, but he noticed Busan, the harbor, the rain. The memories crashed through her mind. Different places. Min-Jae watched her closely. She was hiding something. He could feel it. The question was whether she was protecting herself or protecting someone else. Before he could continue, his phone vibrated. An incoming call. Urgent. His expression changed immediately. The investigator's voice came through the speaker. "We have a problem." Min-Jae stepped away. "What happened?" "We lost surveillance." His eyes narrowed. "How?" "Another team intercepted one of our observers." The words landed heavily because they confirmed his fears. Another group wasn't merely watching Zaria. They were actively interfering, which meant the situation had just become far more dangerous. Later that night, Zaria returned home through a different route. Then another. Then another. A habit developed over years of fear. She never traveled the same way twice when she felt threatened. Halfway home, she entered a convenience store. Waited. Observed. Nobody suspicious. Yet the feeling remained. When she finally reached her apartment building, she noticed something unusual. The front door wasn't fully closed. Her stomach tightened instantly. The building manager was obsessive about security. The door was never left open. Never. Slowly, she stepped inside. The hallway appeared normal, quiet, empty, still. Yet every instinct screamed, "Leave. Now." Instead, she continued toward her apartment. The corridor seemed longer than usual, the silence heavier, the air colder. When she reached her door, she froze. It was unlocked. For several seconds, she simply stared, unable to breathe, unable to move. Then she noticed something even worse. The lock wasn't broken. Someone had opened it properly, someone with a key, or someone skilled enough to avoid leaving evidence. Zaria pushed the door open slowly. Darkness greeted her. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Nothing seemed disturbed. Yet the apartment felt wrong. The same way a photograph feels wrong when one detail has changed. Her eyes scanned the room. The furniture, the shelves, the kitchen, everything appeared untouched. Then she saw it. The metal box. The box she had hidden beneath her bed. The box containing the notebook. The photographs. The memories. The box was sitting in the middle of the floor. Open. Every item remained inside. Except one. The photograph. The photograph showing the mysterious second witness. Gone. Zaria's knees nearly gave way, because whoever entered her apartment hadn't been looking for money, or valuables, or information about her current life. They had been searching for the past, and somehow they knew exactly what to take. A cold realization spread through her body. Someone else remembered that night. Someone else knew the second witness existed. And someone else was desperately trying to erase him. Outside the apartment building, hidden in the shadows across the street, a man lowered a camera. He had just taken several photographs through the window, including one of Zaria standing beside the open box. He sent the images to an encrypted number. A reply arrived almost immediately. 2 words: "Move tonight." The man read the message, then slowly looked back toward the apartment. And for the first time all evening, he smiled. Zaria didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every light in her apartment remained on. Every lock was checked repeatedly. Every sound outside made her flinch. The missing photograph haunted her, not because it was valuable, because of what it meant. Someone had entered her apartment. Someone knew about the second witness. Someone knew enough to search for evidence connected to that night, which meant she wasn't imagining things. The danger was real and getting closer. By sunrise, she had made a decision. For the first time in 7 years, she was going to run. Not permanently, just long enough to think, long enough to breathe, long enough to decide what came next. She called her supervisor and claimed she was sick. Then she packed a small travel bag. Nothing expensive, nothing sentimental, only essentials. The notebook, the necklace, a change of clothes, a few documents. She planned to disappear for several days, maybe longer, maybe forever. She hadn't decided yet, but before she could leave, her phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. The words were short, simple, terrifying. "We know what you saw." Her blood turned to ice. The phone slipped from her hand. For several seconds she simply stared at the screen, unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to think. Then another message arrived. "You should have stayed gone." A third message followed. "This time we finish it." The apartment suddenly felt too small, too exposed, too vulnerable. Whoever sent the messages wasn't guessing. They knew. They knew about the harbor. They knew about the witness. They knew she was alive. And most frightening of all, they knew where to find her. Across the city, Kang Min-Jae was receiving bad news. His investigator entered the office carrying a tablet. "We intercepted communications." Min-Jae looked up. "From who?" "We don't know." The answer irritated him immediately. The investigator continued. "But we traced activities surrounding Zaria's apartment." Min-Jae's expression darkened. "How many people?" "At least 3 separate individuals." The room became silent. 3, not 1, not 2, 3. This was no longer surveillance. This was a hunt. The investigator hesitated. "There's something else." "What?" The investigator placed a photograph on the desk. Min-Jae's eyes narrowed. The image showed Zaria standing inside her apartment, taken from a distance, without her knowledge, without her consent. The timestamp was from the previous night. Someone had photographed her through the window. Min-Jae stared at the image. A dangerous calm settled over him, because suddenly the situation had changed. Before, Zaria had been a person of interest. Now she was a target, and if someone else reached her first, 7 years of unanswered questions would die with her. "Find her." The investigator immediately stood. "We already have a team moving." "No." Min-Jae grabbed his coat. "I'll do it myself." Meanwhile, Zaria left the apartment building carrying her travel bag. The morning sky hung gray above Seoul. Rain threatened in the distance. She moved quickly, head down, trying not to attract attention, trying not to panic, trying not to look over her shoulder every few seconds. Failing at all 3. The streets felt different now. Hostile, unfamiliar. Every stranger seemed suspicious. Every parked car seemed threatening. Halfway to the subway station, she noticed a black sedan, the same model she had seen before. Her heartbeat accelerated. The vehicle remained parked, motionless, yet something about it felt wrong. She crossed the street. The sedan started moving, slowly, carefully, following. The panic she had been suppressing finally exploded. She increased her pace. The sedan matched it. She turned another corner. The sedan followed. No more doubts. No more uncertainty. They were coming for her. Zaria broke into a run. Several blocks away, Min-Jae's SUV accelerated through traffic. His phone remained pressed against his ear. One investigator was feeding him updates. Another was tracking surveillance reports. A third was monitoring traffic cameras. For the first time in years, the entire investigation had become a race. And losing wasn't an option. The investigator's voice crackled through the speaker. "We have movement." Min-Jae gripped the steering wheel tighter. "Where?" The location appeared on his dashboard. Less than 10 minutes away. Too close. Dangerously close. Rain finally began falling. Heavy, cold, relentless. Zaria sprinted through crowded streets. Her shoes splashed through puddles. Her breathing burned. The travel bag bounced against her shoulder. Behind her, the sedan remained visible. Not rushing, not attacking, simply following, like a predator certain its prey couldn't escape. She turned into a narrow alley. A mistake. The moment she entered, she realized it. The path narrowed. The exits became limited. The alley was nearly empty, and waiting near the far end stood two men, both wearing dark jackets, both watching her, both smiling. The realization struck instantly. It wasn't one team. It was multiple teams. The sedan had driven her exactly where they wanted. Zaria stopped running. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. Rain poured around her. The men began walking forward. Slowly, confidently. The kind of confidence that came from knowing victory was close. Zaria stepped backward. One man spoke. "Long time, Ghost." The word hit harder than a punch. Ghost. Nobody had called her that in 7 years. Nobody. Fear surged through her body. The second man smiled. "You've caused a lot of trouble." Another stepped forward. Then another. The distance between them shrank. Zaria looked around desperately. No escape. No help. No options. For the first time in years, she genuinely believed she might die. Then tires screamed. A black SUV exploded into the alley entrance. The vehicle slammed to a stop. Both men turned, confused. The driver's door opened. Kang Min-Jae stepped out. Rain soaked his dark coat instantly. His expression was calm, cold, dangerously controlled. The alley fell silent. One of the men recognized him immediately. The confidence vanished from his face, because everyone in certain circles knew exactly who Kang Min-Jae was. And everyone understood one thing. If Min-Jae wanted someone alive, taking that person became significantly harder. The tension became unbearable. Rain hammered the pavement. Nobody moved. Then Min-Jae spoke. "Step away from her." His voice remained calm, which somehow made it more threatening. One of the men laughed nervously. "You don't understand who you're interfering with." Min-Jae's eyes never blinked. "I do." The laughter disappeared. Several more SUV doors opened behind him. Additional operatives emerged. The odds shifted instantly. The two men exchanged looks, then retreated, not because they wanted to, because they had no choice. Within seconds, they disappeared into the rain. Gone, but not defeated. Watching, waiting, planning, just like before. The alley became quiet again. Only the rain remained. Zaria stood frozen, still trying to process what had happened. Min-Jae slowly approached, Not too close. Just enough. His eyes studied her face. The fear, the exhaustion, the relief, and something else. Recognition. Again. Neither spoke for several moments. Finally, Min-Jae looked toward the alley entrance. They found you faster than I expected. The statement made Zaria's stomach drop, because it confirmed something terrifying. He knew. Not everything, but enough. Who are they? She asked. Min-Jae looked back at her. The answer took several seconds. Asking the wrong question. Rain dripped from his coat. Water ran down his face. His expression remained unreadable. The question is... His eyes locked onto hers. What do they think you know? The words struck like lightning, because for 7 years she had been asking herself the exact same thing. 30 minutes later, they sat inside a secure safe house on the outskirts of Seoul. The building belonged to Min-Jae. Private, hidden, protected. Zaria had resisted coming. She hadn't trusted him. She still didn't, but she trusted the men chasing her even less. A fresh set of clothes had been provided. Dry towels, food, security. Yet none of it made her feel safe, because the danger wasn't outside anymore. The danger sat across the room, watching her, analyzing her, trying to understand her. Min-Jae poured 2 cups of coffee, then placed one in front of her. Neither touched it. Finally, he broke the silence. Let's stop lying. The words hung in the room. Heavy, unavoidable. Zaria looked away. I'm tired. So, am I? His answer came immediately. 7 years of frustration lived inside those words. 7 years of unanswered questions. 7 years of dead ends. He leaned forward slightly. You know who I am. Silence. You knew the moment you saw me. More silence. And somebody just tried to abduct you. The room felt smaller, colder, more dangerous. Yet, somehow, safer than the alley. Safer than her apartment. Safer than being alone. For the first time, Zaria realized something. She wasn't trapped with Kang Min-Jae. Kang Min-Jae was trapped with her, because whatever secret she carried, it was pulling everyone toward the same nightmare, and neither of them had any idea how deep it went. Outside the safe house, hidden far beyond the security perimeter, a pair of binoculars lowered slowly. A man watched the building from a distant hillside, then reached for his phone. The call connected instantly. His message was short. They're together. A long silence followed. Then a voice answered. Good. The line went dead, and somewhere in Seoul, a man opened a locked drawer and removed an old notebook. Inside was a list of names connected to the harbor incident 7 years earlier. One name had already been crossed out. A second name was circled, Zaria Vale. A third name remained untouched, the second witness. And for the first time in years, someone had finally discovered where all 3 paths were leading. The safe house remained silent long after midnight. Rain continued tapping against the windows. Neither Zaria nor Kang Min-Jae had touched the coffee. The tension between them wasn't hostility. Not anymore. It was uncertainty, the kind that emerged when 2 people realized they were standing on opposite sides of the same mystery. For several minutes, neither spoke. Finally, Min-Jae leaned back. You have 2 choices. Zaria looked up. You can keep hiding things. His voice remained calm. Or you can tell me why men were willing to kill you in broad daylight. The room became quiet again. The question was fair, painfully fair. And for the first time in 7 years, Zaria found herself wondering whether she was tired of carrying the secret alone. She had spent years running, years hiding, years convincing herself that silence was safety. Yet silence hadn't protected her. The people from the harbor had found her anyway. The memories had returned anyway. The nightmare had survived anyway. Slowly, She reached into her travel bag. Min-Jae's eyes followed the movement. A moment later, she removed the notebook. The old notebook. The one she had protected for 7 years. The one she had almost destroyed countless times. She placed it on the table. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The object seemed strangely heavy despite its size. Min-Jae stared at it. "What's that?" The answer took several seconds. "A mistake." The notebook changed everything. For nearly an hour, Zaria explained. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Enough to finally crack open the door she had kept sealed for years. She told him about Busan. About arriving in Korea. About taking temporary jobs near the harbor district. About the storm. The warehouse. The voices. The gunshot. The man collapsing onto the pavement. Min-Jae listened without interrupting, without judging, without speaking. His expression never changed, but his eyes did. Every detail mattered. Every memory became another piece of the puzzle. "And you saw my brother?" The question hung in the room. Zaria hesitated, then nodded. Min-Jae's jaw tightened. For years he had imagined this moment. For years he had dreamed of speaking to the witness. Yet now that it was happening, nothing felt the way he expected. Because Zaria didn't sound like a criminal. She didn't sound manipulative. She sounded haunted, broken, terrified, like someone who had spent years carrying a burden too heavy for one person. "What happened after the shooting?" he asked. Zaria looked down. The answer never came. Several seconds passed, then longer. Finally, she shook her head. "I don't know." Min-Jae frowned. "You don't remember?" "No." The frustration in her voice was genuine. Everything after that is fragmented. The confession surprised even her. For years, she had hidden behind certainty. Now, she was admitting weakness, memory loss, fear, confusion. Things she normally refused to reveal. "I remember the rain." Her voice grew quieter. "The gunshot." Another pause. "The man watching." Min-Jae leaned forward. "The second witness." Zaria looked up immediately. "Yes." The room became silent, because for the first time, both of them were talking about the same person. The same mystery. The same shadow that had haunted 7 years of their lives. Elsewhere in Seoul, another man was reading a different notebook. Unlike Zaria's, this one contained names, locations, dates, photographs, instructions. The notebook belonged to someone who had spent 7 years eliminating loose ends. One page had already been completed. Another was in progress. The man turned to a photograph of Zaria. Then another. This one showed Kang Min-Jae. A slow smile appeared on his face. The situation was becoming complicated. Complicated situations created opportunities, and opportunities often created mistakes. Sooner or later, one of them would make one. When that happened, he would be waiting. Back at the safe house, the conversation continued. For the first time, Min-Jae revealed details he had never shared outside his inner circle. The official police report, the inconsistencies, the missing evidence, the vanished witness statements, the investigators who suddenly changed their conclusions. Every new revelation made Zaria more uncomfortable because she began realizing something terrifying. The corruption had been larger than she imagined, far larger. 7 years ago, she believed she had witnessed a murder. Now, she was beginning to suspect she had witnessed something much worse. A cover-up, a carefully planned operation, a conspiracy. And conspiracies didn't survive 7 years without powerful people protecting them. The realization sent a chill through her because powerful people had resources, influence, reach, the ability to find someone almost anywhere, which explained why she had never truly escaped. Hours passed. Eventually, Min-Jae opened the notebook himself. Most pages contained ordinary observations. Nothing useful. Then he stopped. A folded piece of paper slipped from between the pages. The room became still. Neither remembered seeing it before. Slowly, he unfolded it. The paper was old, fragile, water-damaged. Several sections were nearly unreadable, but one thing remained visible. A hand-drawn map. Min-Jae stared at it, then looked up. "Have you seen this before?" Zaria moved closer. The moment she saw it, confusion crossed her face. No, the map appeared crude, incomplete, yet unmistakably intentional. Several locations had been marked with circles. One location stood out immediately, an abandoned storage facility near Busan Harbor, the same district where everything happened 7 years earlier. Min-Jae's pulse quickened. The map wasn't random. Someone had hidden it inside the notebook deliberately. The question was why, and more importantly, who? For the next hour, they analyzed every detail. The markings, the symbols, the handwritten notes. Most of it made no sense until Zaria noticed something. A sequence of numbers written in the corner. The moment she saw them, a memory surfaced. Sudden, violent, unavoidable. The warehouse, the rain, a shipping container, a number painted on its side. The exact same sequence. Her breathing became uneven. The room blurred. The memory pulled her backward, back into the storm, back into the nightmare, back into the harbor. 7 years earlier, young Zaria crouched behind stacked cargo containers. Rain poured from the sky. Her clothes were soaked. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Several voices argued nearby. Angry voices. Dangerous voices. She couldn't understand every word, but she understood enough. Money, shipment, witness, problem, then a name. A name she hadn't remembered until now. The memory exploded inside her mind. Present day, Zaria suddenly stood. The chair nearly toppled backward. Min-Jae immediately noticed. "What is it?" Her eyes widened, because for the first time in 7 years, she remembered a name. Not the killer, not the victim. Someone else. Someone involved. Someone important. A man called Director Han. The words escaped before she could stop them. Director Han. The room froze. Min-Jae's expression changed instantly. For the first time since arriving at the safe house, genuine shock appeared on his face. Zaria noticed immediately. "You know him." It wasn't a question. Min-Jae slowly nodded, and that frightened her more than anything else, because Kang Min-Jae rarely looked surprised. Yet, somehow, that name had shaken him. "Who is he?" she asked. The answer took several seconds. When it finally came, it felt like another piece of the nightmare snapping into place. Director Han was one of the lead investigators on my brother's case. The words hung heavily in the air. Neither moved, neither spoke, because the implication was obvious. If Director Han had been present at the harbor before the murder, then he wasn't investigating the crime. He was connected to it, and if that was true, the conspiracy reached far deeper than either of them imagined. For the first time that night, Min-Jae stood and walked toward the window. His thoughts raced. Director Han. The name had appeared before. Not often, only in small inconsistencies. Tiny contradictions, the kind most people overlooked. Now those contradictions looked very different, because they no longer appeared accidental. They appeared intentional. The pieces were beginning to align, and the picture forming beneath them was ugly, very ugly. If Zaria's memory was accurate, then the entire investigation 7 years ago had been compromised from the beginning. Not after the murder. Before it, which meant someone had planned everything. Every lie, every disappearance, every missing witness, every dead end. For 7 years, the clock approached 2 in the morning. Both of them were exhausted, yet neither could sleep, because every answer created new questions. Every clue revealed another layer. Every memory made the truth more dangerous. Finally, Min-Jae looked at the map again. Something bothered him. One of the marked locations remained unfamiliar. Not Busan, not Seoul, somewhere else. A place neither of them recognized. The symbol beside it looked different from the others. Deliberately different, as if whoever created the map wanted attention drawn there. Min-Jae photographed the page, then sent it to one of his analysts. Minutes later, his phone vibrated. The analyst's reply contained only a single sentence. The message made his blood run cold. He looked up at Zaria. "What is it?" she asked. For several seconds he couldn't answer, because the location on the map wasn't abandoned. It wasn't forgotten, and it definitely wasn't random. The marked location belonged to a private estate outside Seoul, an estate currently owned by someone very powerful, someone who wasn't supposed to have any connection to the harbor incident, someone who had attended Kang Min-Jae's funeral, someone who had publicly supported the investigation, someone both of them trusted, or thought they did. And for the first time since opening the notebook, Min-Jae realized the enemy might be much closer than either of them imagined. The message remained on Min-Jae's phone screen. Neither he nor Zaria spoke. The analyst had identified the estate. Not only identified it, connected it. The property belonged to Chairman Seo Ji-hoon, one of the most respected businessmen in South Korea, a man whose influence stretched through politics, finance, law enforcement, and international trade. A man who had publicly supported the investigation into Kang Min-Jae's death. A man who had attended the funeral. A man who had comforted Min-Jae's family. A man Min-Jae had trusted, at least until now. Slowly, he lowered the phone. His face remained calm. But inside, something was shifting, because trust was difficult for him. And once broken, it never returned. "Who is he?" Zaria asked quietly. Min-Jae stared at the map. "A man with too much power." The answer didn't comfort her. In fact, it made her more nervous. Because powerful enemies were dangerous. Invisible enemies were worse. And the combination of both was usually deadly. Dawn arrived before either of them slept. The safe house felt different now. Smaller. Heavier. The mystery was no longer abstract. Names had appeared. Connections had emerged. The conspiracy finally had faces, which meant the danger had become real. Min-Jae called an emergency meeting with his inner circle. Only 5 people received invitations. 5 people he trusted completely, or at least he thought he did. By mid-morning, they gathered inside a secure operations room beneath one of his private properties. Large screens displayed maps, photographs, timelines, and evidence. Zaria remained nearby, but out of sight, for her protection, and because Min-Jae still wasn't sure who could be trusted. His closest investigator, Park Dae-sung, arrived first. They had worked together for nearly a decade. If Min-Jae trusted anyone, it was Dae-sung. The others arrived shortly afterward. The atmosphere remained serious, focused, professional. Min-Jae briefed them carefully. Not every detail, only enough. The estate, the map, Director Han, the possibility of a larger conspiracy. Nobody interrupted. Nobody questioned him. Yet something felt wrong. A subtle feeling, an instinct, the kind he had learned never to ignore. Someone in the room seemed nervous, not frightened, nervous, as though the conversation was making them uncomfortable. Min-Jae noticed and quietly stored the observation away. Several hours later, the meeting ended. The team dispersed. Assignments were given. tasks delegated, leads pursued. Everything appeared normal, but appearances were becoming increasingly unreliable. As Park Dae-sung exited the building, he immediately pulled out his phone. His expression changed. The confidence vanished. The professionalism disappeared. For the first time all day, he looked afraid. He dialed a number. The call connected instantly. A voice answered. Well, Dae-sung glanced over his shoulder. They know about the estate. Silence. Then the voice spoke again. How much? Not everything. Another pause. Yet, the line went dead. Dae-sung stood motionless. His hands trembled slightly because he understood exactly what the conversation meant. The conspiracy had survived 7 years, and now it was under threat. That evening, Zaria sat alone in a protected room within the safe house. The notebook rested on the table, the map beside it, the silver necklace nearby, the pieces of her past, the fragments of her life. For years, she had believed running would solve everything. Now she understood how wrong she had been. You couldn't outrun something that was already inside the system. You couldn't hide from people who controlled investigations. You couldn't disappear from enemies with unlimited resources. The realization was terrifying, yet strangely freeing, because for the first time in years, she was no longer carrying the burden alone. A knock interrupted her thoughts. Min-Jae entered. He looked exhausted, the kind of exhaustion that came from discovering uncomfortable truths. Without speaking, he sat across from her. For several moments, neither said anything. Then Zaria finally broke the silence. Do you trust your people? The question surprised him, not because of what she asked, because he wasn't sure how to answer. Most of them. Most. His eyes drifted toward the notebook. Trust is complicated. Zaria nodded. She understood that better than most. For years, trust had been a luxury she couldn't afford. Someone inside your organization is helping them. The statement landed heavily because deep down, Min-Jae had already reached the same conclusion. 2 days later, the betrayal revealed itself, not through confession, not through carelessness, through greed. One of Min-Jae's cybersecurity specialists intercepted encrypted communications moving through a private network. The message trail was difficult to follow, designed by professionals, carefully hidden, yet not hidden well enough. The specialist immediately contacted Min-Jae. The report arrived within minutes. Min-Jae read it twice, then a third time. Each reading made the situation worse, because the communications originated from inside his organization. Not just inside, near the center. The source belonged to Park Dae-sung, his most trusted investigator, his closest ally, the man who had spent years helping him search for the ghost. The room became completely silent. For several seconds, Min-Jae simply stared at the report, unmoving, expressionless. The specialist shifted uncomfortably. Boss. No response. Should we verify it? Min-Jae slowly looked up. His eyes had changed, not with anger, with disappointment. And disappointment was far more dangerous. Verify everything. The verification took 6 hours. Every result pointed to the same conclusion. Phone records, encrypted messages, financial transactions, meeting locations, dead drops. 7 years of hidden activity, 7 years of deception, 7 years of betrayal. Park Dae-sung had been feeding information to someone, not occasionally, consistently. The realization hit harder than Min-Jae expected, because betrayal from an enemy was normal. Betrayal from family was different, and Dae-sung had been family. At least he thought so. That night, Min-Jae arranged a private meeting. No security, no witnesses, no interruptions, just the two of them. The meeting took place inside an empty warehouse near the Han River. The location was symbolic. Years earlier, they had celebrated victories there, discussed plans there, shared drinks there. Now it would host something else. The end. Dae-sung arrived exactly on time. He immediately sensed something was wrong. Min-Jae stood near a large window overlooking the river. His hands rested in his pockets. His expression unreadable. Neither spoke initially. The silence stretched. Finally, Dae-sung forced a smile. "You wanted to see me?" Min-Jae nodded, then tossed a folder across the table. Dae-sung opened it. His face immediately drained of color. Inside were copies of the communications, the transfers, the evidence, everything, the truth. For several seconds, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The warehouse felt frozen in time. Then Dae-sung sighed, not in surprise, in defeat. The sound told Min-Jae everything. No denial, no excuses, no lies, just acceptance. "You should have destroyed the records," Dae-sung said quietly. The words landed like a knife, because they confirmed it. Every suspicion, every fear, every doubt. True. Why? Min-Jae asked, a simple question, yet one carrying 7 years of pain. Dae-sung looked away. The same reason everyone does. Money, power, fear, regret. The answer could have been any of them. Instead, Dae-sung said something unexpected. "I was trying to stay alive." The statement confused Min-Jae. For the first time all night, genuine curiosity appeared. "What does that mean?" Dae-sung laughed bitterly. "You still don't understand." Then he looked directly at Min-Jae. "The people behind this are bigger than you think." A chill moved through the warehouse, because there was no arrogance in his voice, no exaggeration, only fear, real fear, the kind powerful men rarely displayed. "I thought I could manage it." Dae-sung continued. "I thought I could control what information they received." Min-Jae said, "Nothing. They threatened my family." Another pause. "I chose wrong." The confession hung heavily in the air. For a moment, it almost sounded sincere. Then Dae-sung said something that changed everything. "They already know where she is." The word struck like lightning. Min-Jae's eyes narrowed. "What?" Dae-sung's expression darkened. "The safe house." The room became silent, dead silent, because only a handful of people knew that location. And Dae-sung was one of them. Min-Jae immediately reached for his phone. Too late. An incoming message appeared before he could dial. The message contained a photograph. His blood turned cold. The image showed the safe house, taken minutes earlier, from long range. A second photograph followed, then a third. The final image showed Zaria standing near a window, unaware she was being watched, unaware someone had already found her. Min-Jae looked up sharply, but Dae-sung was no longer standing still. The investigator suddenly stepped backward, then ran, not toward an exit, toward a side door leading into darkness. Gunshots echoed. Chaos erupted. The warehouse exploded into movement, and hundreds of kilometers away, hidden inside a luxury estate surrounded by private security, an older man smiled while reviewing surveillance photographs. Chairman Seo Ji-hoon. For 7 years, he had remained invisible, untouchable, patient. Now, the game was finally moving, because the ghost had been found. The crime boss was getting close, and soon, both of them would discover a truth far more dangerous than murder. The drive back to the safe house felt endless. Rain pounded against the windshield. The city lights blurred into streaks of color. Kang Min-Jae gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Park Dae-sung's betrayal was bad enough, but the photographs changed everything. The enemy wasn't following them anymore. The enemy was ahead of them. For 7 years, Min-Jae had believed he was chasing the truth. Now he realized the truth had been carefully guiding him exactly where it wanted him to go. And that realization terrified him. Not for himself. For Zaria. The safe house was already being evacuated when he arrived. His remaining loyal operatives moved quickly. Equipment disappeared. Vehicles were prepared. Evidence was packed. Every minute mattered now. Min-Jae entered the building and found Zaria standing exactly where she appeared in the surveillance photograph, near the window, waiting. The moment she saw his face, she knew something was wrong. What happened? Min-Jae didn't answer immediately. Instead, he handed her a photograph. Her expression changed the moment she saw it. The image showed her standing inside the safe house, taken from a distance, taken without her knowledge, taken recently. The color drained from her face. They found us. Min-Jae nodded. Yes. For several seconds, neither spoke. The situation had become brutally simple. Someone powerful wanted them silenced. And time was running out. 3 hours later, they arrived at a second safe location. Smaller, older, far less comfortable. An abandoned countryside, residents hidden among dense forests outside Seoul. Nobody spoke much during the journey. Both were exhausted. Physically, emotionally, mentally. The weight of 7 years seemed heavier than ever. Eventually, Min-Jae sat across from her in the old house's living room. A fireplace crackled nearby. The atmosphere felt strangely calm, like the silence before a storm. For a long time, he simply studied her. Then he asked the question that had been growing inside him since the harbor memory returned. What aren't you telling me? Zaria lowered her eyes, because she knew exactly what he meant. The notebook, the missing memories, the second witness. There was one piece she still hadn't shared, one truth she had buried deeper than all the others. Not because she wanted to deceive him, because she had spent 7 years trying to forget it herself. I remembered something. Min-Jae remained silent, listening, waiting, patient. It happened after the shooting. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The room seemed to grow quieter, the part I've never been able to remember. Min-Jae leaned forward slightly, and for the first time since meeting her, he saw genuine fear. Not fear of being hunted, not fear of dying, fear of the truth. 7 years earlier, the storm over Busan Harbor had become violent. The gunshot echoed across the shipping yards. The man collapsed. Voices erupted. People ran. Chaos spread. Young Zaria remained hidden behind stacked cargo containers, terrified, frozen, unable to move. Then somebody grabbed her. The memory slammed into her mind with terrifying clarity. A hand, strong, urgent, pulling her into the darkness. Not an attacker, a rescuer, a man, a familiar man. Present day, Zaria closed her eyes. The memory felt so real, she could almost hear his voice again. Don't make a sound. The words echoed through her mind. Min-Jae sat motionless. His heartbeat accelerated, because suddenly the missing pieces were beginning to align. What happened next? Zaria slowly looked up. Tears filled her eyes. The answer changed everything. He saved me. The room froze. He hid me. Another pause. He knew they were looking for witnesses. Min-Jae's expression darkened. Who? Zaria swallowed hard, then spoke the words. Your brother. Silence. Absolute silence. The fireplace crackled softly. Neither moved. Neither breathed. For 7 years, Min-Jae believed his brother had never met the ghost. For 7 years, he believed the witness vanished after the murder. For 7 years, He believed he was searching for a stranger. Now he was learning something impossible. His brother knew her. His brother protected her. His brother saved her life. The implications were staggering. Every assumption Min-Jae had carried for 7 years began collapsing. If Jun Seo protected Zaria, then he knew she witnessed something important. If he helped her disappear, then he never intended for her to be found. And if that was true, then the official version of events was completely false. Min-Jae stood and walked toward the window. His thoughts raced. Questions multiplied. Answers became fewer. Then Zaria spoke again. And the next revelation hit even harder. There was someone else. Min-Jae turned immediately. The second witness. She nodded. No. Her voice trembled. Someone higher. The room became still, because she wasn't talking about a witness anymore. She was talking about a leader, a mastermind, someone above everyone else, someone giving orders, someone hidden for 7 years. Meanwhile, hundreds of kilometers away, Chairman Seo Ji-hoon sat alone inside his private office. Several television screens displayed financial reports, security feeds, news broadcasts, normal things, respectable things. The image of a successful businessman, a philanthropist, a respected national figure. But appearances were often lies. The old man slowly opened a locked drawer. Inside rested an aging photograph. The picture showed several men standing near Busan Harbor, taken years earlier. Most of the faces were familiar. Director Han, several executives, political figures, business leaders, and one young man, Kang Jun-seo. The chairman stared at the photograph, then sighed. Regret, a rare emotion for him, because Jun Seo had never been supposed to die. That had never been the plan. The death created problems, complications, loose ends. And loose ends had a habit of becoming dangerous, especially after 7 years. His phone rang. The caller ID displayed a single name, Director Han. The chairman answered. We found the second witness. For the first time in years, genuine surprise crossed his face. What? Director Han repeated himself. We found him. The chairman slowly stood, because if that information was true, everything was about to change. Back at the safe house, Min-Jae finally asked the question that mattered most. What exactly did my brother help you escape from? Zaria looked away. The answer wasn't easy, because the truth sounded unbelievable, even to her. For years she doubted her own memory, doubted her own eyes, doubted herself. Not anymore. The memories were finally returning, and they painted a horrifying picture. Slowly, she reached into the notebook. From inside, she removed a folded page, one she had overlooked until recently, one containing a list of shipping records, cargo numbers, delivery schedules, container references. At first glance, it seemed meaningless. Then Min-Jae saw one word, and everything changed. Humanitarian. The shipping containers were labeled as humanitarian aid shipments. Food, medicine, emergency supplies, charity cargo, perfectly legal, perfectly harmless, or at least they appeared to be. Zaria's voice remained quiet. Those containers weren't carrying aid. Min-Jae stared at her. What were they carrying? The answer came immediately. People. The room fell silent. A chill swept through the house, because both of them understood exactly what she meant. Not passengers, victims, trafficking, smuggling. Human lives hidden behind charity labels. An operation worth billions, protected by powerful people, connected to respected institutions, and hidden beneath layers of influence and corruption. Suddenly, everything made sense. The cover-up, the witnesses, the disappearances, the murders, the fear, the 7-year hunt. Jun Seo hadn't died because he witnessed a crime. He died because he discovered an entire criminal network, one protected by some of the most powerful people in the country. And now, Min-Jae and Zaria were standing exactly where Jun Seo stood 7 years ago. Too close to the truth. Far too close. Outside the safe house, a vehicle slowly rolled to a stop beyond the tree line. A lone figure stepped out. The man carried a weathered folder beneath one arm. Inside the folder were photographs, names, evidence, and one photograph in particular, the second witness. The witness everyone had spent 7 years trying to find. The witness who could destroy everything. And for the first time since the harbor incident, he was coming forward willingly. The final pieces of the puzzle were finally moving into place. And somewhere in the darkness, a war that began 7 years ago was preparing to end. The man emerged from the darkness just before sunrise. The forest surrounding the safe house remained silent. Cold mist drifted between the trees. Birds had not yet begun singing. The world felt suspended between night and morning, waiting, watching. The figure walked slowly toward the house, carrying a weathered folder beneath his arm. He wasn't armed. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running. After 7 years, he was finally done running. Inside the safe house, one of Min-Jae's operatives spotted him first. Within seconds, security teams moved into position. Weapons drawn. Defensive perimeter established. The stranger raised both hands. Peacefully, calmly, almost tired, Min-Jae stepped outside. Zaria followed moments later. The moment she saw the man's face, her entire body froze. The memory returned instantly. The harbor, the rain, the shadows, the hidden observer, the second witness. It was him, 7 years older, 7 years more exhausted, but undeniably the same man. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then the stranger smiled sadly. I was wondering how long it would take before you remembered me. Zaria felt her knees weaken, because after 7 years of nightmares, after 7 years of questions, the ghost she'd been searching for was finally standing in front of her. His name was Lee Hyun-woo, a former logistics manager, a former employee of one of Chairman Seo's shipping companies, and for 7 years, the most hunted witness in South Korea. Inside the safe house, he opened the weathered folder. The contents immediately changed everything. Photographs, shipping records, financial transactions, names, dates, locations, evidence, years of evidence, the kind of evidence powerful people spent fortunes trying to destroy. Hyun-woo had spent 7 years collecting it, protecting it, building a case, waiting for the right moment. The harbor operation wasn't local. He spoke quietly. It wasn't national. The room remained silent. It was international. The words landed heavily. Every face hardened. Every expression darkened. Because the scope was far larger than anyone imagined. The trafficking operation stretched across multiple countries, multiple corporations, multiple governments, entire networks hidden behind charitable organizations and humanitarian aid programs. Chairman Seo wasn't simply protecting a crime. He was protecting an empire built on human suffering, an empire worth billions. And Kang Jun-seo had discovered it. For years, Min-Jae believed his brother died because he witnessed something dangerous. The truth was worse, much worse. Jun-seo hadn't stumbled across the operation. He had been actively investigating it, secretly, alone, without telling anyone, even Min-Jae. The evidence revealed months of research, meetings, recordings, financial tracking. Jun-seo had been preparing to expose everything. Then someone found out. The room became silent as Hyun-woo revealed the final piece. The night he died. His voice trembled slightly. He was trying to get Zaria out. Zaria looked down. Tears filled her eyes. Because the memory was finally complete. She remembered Jun Seo pulling her through the storm. She remembered him giving her the necklace. She remembered his final instructions. Run. Hide. Stay alive. No matter what. Most importantly, she remembered what happened next. The memory crashed into her. Violent. Clear. Unavoidable. Jun Seo knew he wasn't surviving that night. He knew the people coming for him. He knew the odds. Yet he stayed behind anyway. Not to save himself. To save her. Because she was the witness. Because she had seen too much. Because someone had to survive. The realization shattered what remained of her emotional defenses. For 7 years she carried guilt. Now she understood why. She hadn't simply witnessed his death. She had survived his sacrifice. Across Seoul, Chairman Seo Ji-hoon received the news. The second witness had surfaced. The evidence had been consolidated. The remaining pieces were coming together. The old man stood quietly beside his office window. The city stretched endlessly before him. 7 years. 7 years of control. 7 years of silence. 7 years of success. And now it was collapsing, not because of investigators, not because of law enforcement, because of survivors. One frightened young woman, one determined witness, one dead man who refused to let the truth disappear. The chairman slowly closed his eyes, then made a decision, perhaps the first honest decision he'd made in years. He called Director Han. "We're finished." The line went silent. Director Han immediately understood. "No. Yes. We can still. It's over." The chairman ended the call. Moments later, he contacted authorities himself. And for the first time in 7 years, the truth began moving faster than the lies. Director Han chose a different path. He ran. Within hours he disappeared. Private transportation, false documents, prepared escape routes, contingency plans. He had spent years preparing for this possibility. Unfortunately for him, so had Kang Min-Jae. The manhunt lasted less than a day. Director Han was intercepted before reaching international waters. When authorities searched his belongings, they discovered additional records, additional names, additional crimes. Enough evidence to destroy what remained of the conspiracy. The network finally began collapsing. One arrest became 5. 5 became 20. 20 became hundreds. The empire cracked, then shattered. Weeks later, the world learned the truth. News broadcasts dominated every channel. International investigations expanded. Victims were identified. Families reunited. Organizations dissolved. Assets seized. For the first time in years, justice was finally catching up. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to matter. Enough to change lives. Enough to honor sacrifices. Several months later, spring arrived in Seoul. The city felt different. Brighter. Lighter. Freer. For the first time in years, Zaria walked without constantly looking over her shoulder. The fear hadn't vanished completely. Perhaps it never would, but it no longer controlled her. That alone felt miraculous. The notebook rested safely in a drawer. The nightmares became less frequent. The memories hurt less. Healing had finally begun. One afternoon, she found herself standing near the Han River, the same river where Min-Jae had confronted Daesung months earlier, the same river that had witnessed betrayal, loss, truth, and survival. Footsteps approached. She smiled before turning around, because she already knew who it was. Kang Min-Jae. For several moments, neither spoke. The silence felt comfortable now, not tense, not uncertain, comfortable. A rare thing for both of them. You look different. Min-Jae smiled slightly. So, do you? The answer made her laugh. A genuine laugh. The kind that once felt impossible. They began walking beside the river together. No bodyguards. No investigations. No conspiracies. Just two people carrying scars from the same storm. Eventually, they stopped near the water. The city skyline reflected across the surface. Beautiful, peaceful, normal. Min-Jae looked toward the horizon. You know, he paused. My brother would have liked you. The words caught her off guard. Emotion filled her eyes immediately. Not sadness, not guilt. Something softer, something warmer. He saved both of us. Min-Jae nodded. Yeah. For a moment, neither spoke, because some truths required silence. Several weeks later, a memorial service was held for Kang Min-Jae. Small, private, meaningful. No reporters, no cameras, no politics. Just people whose lives he had touched, people whose lives he had saved, people who finally understood what he sacrificed. After everyone else left, only Zaria remained. She placed the silver necklace beside the memorial photograph. The same necklace Min-Jae gave her 7 years earlier, the necklace that helped unlock the truth, the necklace that brought her back. For several seconds, she stood silently, then smiled. Thank you. The wind moved gently through the trees, and somehow, for the first time in 7 years, the burden felt lighter. Later that evening, Zaria sat on a rooftop overlooking Seoul. The sunset painted the sky gold and crimson. The city glowed beneath her. Alive, endless, beautiful. Min-Jae joined her moments later. Neither rushed to speak. Neither needed to. The hardest part was over. The truth was finally free. The ghosts were finally buried. And the future, for the first time in a very long time, actually felt possible. As darkness slowly settled over Seoul, the two survivors looked toward the city lights below, a city that almost destroyed them, a city that eventually revealed the truth. And somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond the pain, beyond the fear, beyond the 7 lost years, a new chapter quietly began, not built on secrets, not built on lies, but built on something both of them had nearly forgotten existed: hope.